So you graduate when you're 19, you do your PhD, and you got into AI pretty early.
Well, I've just been obsessed with like computer science. I did neuroscience. I did research in like AI stuff. I was like, I want to work on AI. And they go, only PhDs work on AI. If you've pivoted 6 times in the last month, are you really thinking deeply about what you want to build and why? There are only really 2 times that matter in a startup. The first time is today, like right now. And then the only other time that matters is like one day. What is our big vision? How are we going to achieve it? I think the intuition is that if we build a dog or a cat and we market it that way, there's no way we can beat it.
Can you walk me through what the whole process, you have an idea of what you want this hardware piece to be all the way to production ready? Ryan, welcome to No Fixed Route. Thanks for excited to have you. We've known each other for a while.
Yeah.
And normally I don't like going into founder stories, but I think your past is very interesting. So I kind of want to talk about it. You skipped high school, went straight to college.
I did.
How the hell does that happen?
So I think I got lucky, to be honest with you. There's a program at the University of Washington in Seattle, which is where I grew up, where if you're advanced as a middle schooler, you can apply. You have to take the ACT, you get a high enough score. You have to write some essays. You need like teacher recommendations. You interview, and if they like you, they put you in transition school, which is basically like a 1-year, super hardcore prep program. They accept maybe 12 to 16 kids a year, maybe about like 8 to 12 from making out of it. It's like physics, math, history, ethics, and the 5th subject that I forget. And if you pass at the end, they just say, congrats, you're a college student.
Was it weird being how old were you, a 14-year-old?
Yeah, so 14 when I started university. Yeah.
Okay. Did people look at you weird? Did you feel lonely?
A little bit. The nice thing is because they, do like 12 or so kids every year, and they have like a lounge where anyone can hang out in, it becomes like a little community of like 50, 60 folks.
Okay.
And so like when you're age like 14 to 16, 17, that's mainly like your social sphere.
Gotcha.
And then once you're old enough to just, hang out with college students, you start making college friends. And that's typically when you get into your major. And so you sort of branch out from there.
Got it. So you graduate when you're 19, you do your PhD right after that, and you got into AI pretty early before any of this crazy stuff started happening.
Yeah. Well, I've just been obsessed with like AI and robots since I was a kid. Like I was a huge fan of sci-fi. I love nature. I love animals. Like how do they work? How do they think? How do we work? How do we think? So like in undergrad, I did computer science. Oh, in computer science, I did neuroscience. I did research in like AI stuff. And I kind of only did a PhD because, I would walk around at the career fair for like the CS jobs. I was like, I want to work on AI. And they go, only PhDs work on AI. And then like a week later, both professors that I'm doing research with, like one-on-ones, they're like, have you considered a PhD? I was like, all right, I guess this is what I'm doing.
Got it. Well, so you come out of it. Do you start your company immediately after the first company, or do you work in big tech somewhere else?
No, started the first startup like right out of PhD.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fresh out of that, you decide to move to New York.
So I was actually in New York for my PhD.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What school did you go to for your PhD?
So I went to Cornell,
Okay.
but they have a campus, Cornell Tech, on Roosevelt Island.
Yeah.
In New York City. And if one of your advisors is at Cornell Tech, you get to move there if you'd like.
Was that by design? Did you pick your advisor that way, or was it just coincidence?
Yeah, a little bit.
Gotcha. Awesome. Yeah. So you get into AI. We won't talk a lot about your first company, but you kind of decide to pivot to go into hardware. I speak to a lot of founders. I have a lot of founder friends. I don't know a single hardware founder. I feel like it's pretty rare, especially in San Francisco. But I kind of want to dive deep into what it takes to build hardware.
Sure.
Let's start with what your company is you guys are building.
Yeah. So our vision is to put 1 billion robot companions into the world. Okay. The same way people have dogs and cats that become part of the family that they build lifelong bonds with. We want to do that with robots. Gosh, we want to do it in a fun, fantastical, emotional way. They should be like soft. They should be warm. They should be huggable.
So these aren't like metal robots that, clink when you tap on them there. Okay. I feel like it's very hard to design such a thing that feels and looks kind of like a dog. I saw some of your mock-ups. they don't look like traditional dogs. Like, walk me through what the design principle was.
Yeah. So I think the first, and this was kind of an intuition on our part because, you know, I I was super allergic to animals when I was a kid. Like I wasn't allowed to have pets. I can tell you the fun allergy story if you want. And then when I got into my early 20s, I kind of grew out of my allergies. So I went overboard. I got like a dog, a cat, 17 fish, like 4 frogs. And I fostered a few different like weird pets. And I think the intuition is that if we build a dog or a cat and we market it that way, there's no way we can beat it on the experience level or on the price point because you can go get a dog or a cat for free. You can just adopt them at the shelter. And so the question, instead of fix your weaknesses, double down on your strengths, what's interesting about a robotic companion is that it can sort of be anything. Like I can get a dog or a cat, but I can't get a dragon. I can't get an endangered fennec fox. I can't get a red panda. I can't get a unicorn. And so we really tried to lead into that when we were designing like our first set of concepts. Like,
Gotcha.
let's put something into the world that no one has seen before.
Gotcha. Either you or your co-founder have design background, or did you have to work with an external designer that's going to bring your visions to life?
We worked with an external design firm, did a fantastic job.
Okay. Can you walk me through what the whole process looks like from you have an idea of what you want this hardware piece to be all the way to, production ready?
Yeah, we're still in the middle of that. We get to like,
What have you want to show far?
Yeah, I think at least for us, one thing we learned pretty clearly was that we wanted to start with the design first, as opposed to the technical constraints. Start with being very sort of aesthetic. If we could do anything, what would it look like? What would it feel like? How would it interact? And then concept from there and say, okay, now we've got a big technical engineering problem ahead of us. We can always compromise, but at least we know sort of what our North Star is and what we want to pull off. The other thing we've learned, one of the big challenges with hardware is you're dealing with the physical world, you're dealing with vendors, you're dealing with many, many different parts. And so you can end up in a situation where like, it's a 2-week lead time for this part, right? We're using a stepper motor, so we need a separate board to run the control code before it interacts with the Jetson, and it's actually running in neural networks. And so you want to, as much as you can, simplify the system, even if it increases the cost while you're in the prototyping phase, because it'll allow you to iterate so much faster. And then whatever you can move from like hardware of the real world into software, you do. So like we've got a loop with our CAD guy where we've got just this automated process that will take the CAD files, convert them into like simulation files for like Majoko or Newton, and then we run a whole loop of training the RL, seeing what the forces look like, seeing what the wear and tear on the motors look like. And then we have a little report, we send it back to him, and then he can re-optimize parts of the legs, for example, to like reduce the energy draw.
Does the feedback ever go back to design where they have to tweak things, or do you guys like finalize everything given how the design has made it?
So far, not yet, but we're still quite early in the prototype phase.
Got it. How do you know early on what's going to land with consumers? Like, do you show the mock-ups to friends and family and see if they like it, or is there like a more sophisticated thing that you guys are doing?
Well, I'm curious, what would you think? What would you think?
I mean, my consumer mind is going to turn on here, but I would think you get some kind of landing page, you get the designs on there, you run Facebook ads and see who clicks on what.
So I think there's 2 directions founders tend to go. One is to say, we have taste, we're Steve Jobs. We're just going to build the best thing we can and send it out and it'll work. Not the biggest fan of that because you don't know until you actually put it out into the market. So we did a lot of testing. When we first got our set of concepts as like, these 2D renders, we polled anyone and everyone we knew. We sent out surveys, we ran ads, we did all these things. And what we initially expected was that there would be like a favorite or two, because these are all like completely different designs. And we learned that there was no favorite. Like statistically,
It was random.
it was basically random. There were some that were really bad, but like out of the 9, like 7 of them were like equally favored. And we tried to be like, okay, is it a demographic thing? Like, do my sister's friends, who are all about the same age range, they're all, young women, do they really like a certain few? And the answer was no. And no matter how you try to slice the data, it didn't work. So I think we realized when you're building companions, it's intensely personal, right? And everybody has their own things that they want. There's a reason there's like 50 bajillion breeds of dogs and like however many breeds of cats out there.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So you get the designs, you turn it into CAD files, you have a person that is doing these CAD files for you, and then you're in some kind of simulation to see how the 3D renders will interact in the real world, and then you loop that back to the CAD guy.
Yeah.
You optimize that loop first.
Yeah, but within that, you also try to be as incremental as possible. So like imagine a cat or a dog, right? Like their hind legs are different than their front legs. There's more power coming from the hind legs. It's also like part of the design of like how it looks and how it moves around, how to make it lifelike. But we said, okay, our first loop is going to be just on the front legs. We're going to design the front legs. We're going to work on all these things in the loop. And then when we go bench tests, which we're doing next week at the CNC shop, we're going to bench test the front legs sort of just hanging, like looking at the animations they can do, how lifelike, how springy, how nice it is. And then we're going to test the full loop by just welding 2 front legs in the front to 2 front legs in the back. And then we can test the walking, the locomotion. And then once we've done that, then the next loop is, all right, let's do the back legs. Then we do the back legs and front legs together. And the next loop is, let's do the head. And then the next loop is, let's do the tail. And then the next loop is, all right, any integration stuff. And then what do we put on top of the skeleton? How do we build the foam and the skin, the stuff that you're touching, stuff you're looking at?
Got it. Fascinating. Do you guys have like a machine shop in your backyard or in your apartment that you use? Like, how are you flying back and forth? I think you said you're going to Montana to kind of meet some people. Walk me through like what the actual production looks like.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're pretty lucky. It's weird in life, like how valuable long-term relationships or things that happened like 7 years ago can be. But Drew, my co-founder, had worked with this guy, Alec, like 7 years back when I was doing some like self-driving race car stuff. And, they kept up a friendship. And usually it's quite expensive to get one of these machines or even like the machine time but he just thought it was a cool project. And he was like, all right, I'm happy to be in the loop and be helping out with this.
Do it for free? Or are you?
No, we paid him, but way, way cheaper than how much it costs to hire folks internally.
Gotcha.
And use like a local machine shop or even like a person.
Okay, that makes sense. Do you guys have actual dogs and cats that you're studying with like EKG equivalent for like muscle stuff, or are you just designing everything from first principles from the ground up?
It's kind of both, right? Okay. So you want it, I think with the design of this, you don't want to try to match like a dog or a cat exactly, right? And you also don't want it to be like super robotic. You want it somewhere in the middle. So I actually have a file of like maybe hundreds of like cute animal gifs off of like Instagram, like foxes, weasels, stoats, cats, dogs, horses even. And at some point in the future, we're going to build a data set, just sort of scrape all the sort of like ways that they move that are fun and cute and interesting. But also we're trying to bring in a lot of knowledge from like animation, like sort of like think of Toothless and How to Train Your Dragon, right? Kind of moves like a cat, kind of moves like a dragon, but there's also some new stuff there. And there's all sorts of interesting principles in animation that we're learning now, like, exaggerated movements, wash and stretch, the timing of things that are unrealistic, but they make it feel more real.
Interesting. I know you said you're thinking of moving to LA at least. And I thought it was just for, there's a lot of consumer activity going there, but, huge part is also what you just said. Animation translates very, very well to what you guys are building here.
Yeah.
Are you going after, these animators that are making these characters for all these movies and shows that we watch? Are you trying to get them as advisor or people to talk to? Walk me through like how much Hollywood plays into what you're doing.
Yeah, we already got one, which we're really happy about. This guy was like one of the directing teams for like Frozen, Zootopia, Big Hero 6. And he's been teaching us a lot about the animation and the storytelling, and he's been super helpful. We're going to LA for a week or two to sort of see what it is. Because I mean, it's very easy to say, well, LA is the spot for like entertainment, and then every single hardware startup I hear about, especially at defense and like space, is in El Segundo. Mm-hmm. But we want to, go there and meet people, talk to people, see how they do production, see how they think about like storyboarding, animation, character creation, and just kind of like suck it all up and learn.
And at the end, when you're selling these things to consumers, are they going to come pre-built with like stories that, that people could play with, or is it just going to be like a dumb dog type thing and you have to train it yourself?
That's something to figure out. I think it's a bit of both, right? Because when you think about, have you had any pets?
We had dogs growing up, yes.
Okay. Did you get any one of them as a puppy?
All of them as puppies. Actually, one of them gave birth to the other one and then passed away. So we kind of like took care of the child.
Yeah. So I think you'll notice something, right? Which is that at about a certain early age, all the puppies have like slightly different personalities. So they do kind of come pre-baked, and that's something that's interesting. But then they also evolve with you over time, and you can train them. And so it's a mix of both.
Got it. What are your thoughts on like, it's always been a human fantasy, whatever, to be able to communicate with dogs. But I feel like if your pet dog is speaking English to you, it'll feel weird. Do you guys think about what these robots are going to sound like?
Yeah, I think it varies person to person. Have you ever seen the movie Kiki's Delivery Service?
I have not, no.
Miyazaki. It's great. It's like a witch on a broom,
Okay.
who does delivery, and she's got a black cat that talks to her,
Okay.
and it's actually like a fun, fantastic relationship. And then over the course of the movie, the spoiler is that the cat loses its ability to speak, or at least she loses her ability to understand the cat, and it's actually quite sad. I would like it, honestly, if I could talk to my cat. I think that'd be sick. For some people, they prefer deciphering the meows and the different sort of body language and feeling like they have a personal understanding. So I think it's a spectrum, right? If it talks, on one side, it's Pokemon Pika Pika. In the middle, it's something like a parrot or a 3-year-old, right? And then on the other side, it's, we'll just stick a language model into it.
Yeah.
And I think the set point is different for everyone else, but what the starting set point is, we'll have to figure out. It'll be a lot of like user testing.
Gotcha. And then are you guys going to bake in a lot of the like, I don't know, less convenient parts of having pets? Like you have to take it on a walk and you can't take it on a flight and stuff like that. Or is this like, a pet that you wish you had?
Probably want to minimize those.
Okay.
Right.
Got it. That makes sense. Cool. How are you thinking about going to market with a product like this?
Still figuring it out.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I was going to ask, there's like some tests that you're running that we kind of talked about earlier. Walk me through at least how you're thinking.
Yeah, I think when you're faced with something like this, what you should ask yourself is like, what's the most important question to answer? What's the first question to answer that we need to answer? And I think for us, the very first question we need to answer is like, what's the initial wedge? What's the initial population? And there's many different ways of slicing it, right? You could do it by demographic. So like one possible wedge is, say, the elderly, because they tend to be more lonely, because, a lot of them want a pet, but cannot take care of a pet, right? Or it might be young children, because there's a responsibility question there. Parents may not want that as much. Or it may be young adults in like urban centers, because they live in a small apartment, they have roommates, they might travel a lot, right? So one way to do it is by demographics. Another way to do it is to just do it by like price point. To say it needs to be under a certain amount of money, or it needs to be between a certain band, or it needs to be above a certain amount of money. And so there's a lot of, I think, testing, both in terms of like interviewing people in hand-to-hand, but also like ad testing and landing pages and stuff like that to figure that out.
Yeah. I think you guys started with like going after elderly demographic. Now you guys are kind of pivoting. Also, I believe the first iteration of this product was a very utility-packed companion dog, where it was like a seeing animal, right, for blind people.
Yeah.
At what point did that utility diminish, and you guys figured out that you don't need it in order to scale?
It was more so, this was maybe in August, September of 2025. The challenge was just to go to market on that product, which is who's going to pay for it.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of conversations with like the Veterans Administration and the government to like be the first customer. And I think the possibility of that just kind of got a little bit screwed by the new administration and DOGE and a lot of changes in the rules, which is a shame.
Yeah. Okay. I think after government deals, B2B just in general, in my opinion, is a slog, and no founder should ever do it. But I'm also biased because I'm doing consumer stuff.
I think a huge aspect of it is performative, and a huge aspect of it is wasted motion and not enough sort of deep thinking about what you want to do and why.
Do you feel like there's a lot of people that are pressured into growth and people are just like running too fast without having direction?
That might be part of it. I think part of it is also a little bit the YC kind of like cram, kind of lean startup style or theory around like entrepreneurship, where it's all about like really, really quick tests and growing week over week and validating super, super fast, which I think tends to produce a lot of wasted motion and leads people to local optimization. Like if you've pivoted 6 times in the last month, are you really thinking deeply about what you want to build and why? Right. That's a big part of it. I think the culture here can also be very kind of transactional, status driven at times. And I think it can be very much an echo chamber just because there's so much startup tech stuff. It's all startup tech stuff and it's all startup tech events. And that can be a bit blinding, when you're not exposed to other facets of work.
That makes sense.
Life, yeah.
What's the alternative to this like very YC way of doing startups?
I mean, I think the other alternative that is a big strain of thought is more like the Founders Fund, like Peter Thielian, like 0 to 1 style philosophy, which is really think deeply, test, work in a space, find an unearned secret where you can build something monopoly and big there. And then it's sort of like, I think it was either Peter Thiel or one of the other Founders Fund partners who described it as like, when you're making a Hollywood blockbuster action movie, you don't iterate, right? You say, we know what we're doing. You write the script. You're like, all right, who's the lead actor for this? Is it Tom Cruise? Is it Jason Statham or whatever? You get them, you build the team, you raise the money, a lot of money, and then you go. That also has its drawbacks because you can get in a mode of not interacting with the world and sort of producing truth and testing stuff out. You can sit there and burn a ton of money over a period of long months and build something that doesn't matter. I think those are kind of the two dominant strains of thought, and they should both kind of learn from each other. Probably there needs to be some kind of like synthesis there.
That makes sense.
Like the way we think about it is that there are only really 2 times that matter in a startup. The first time is like today, like right now. Like, what are our habits? What are we doing on a day-to-day basis? What is our process? What are we testing today? What are we accomplishing today or this week? And then the only other time that matters is like one day. What is our big vision? How are we going to achieve it? And you want to be very sort of rigid on the vision if you have conviction, but very flexible and pragmatic on the day-to-day, week-to-week. How do we get there? Because you can make a 3-month plan, 6-month plan, 12-month plan, but it never works and it never really maps to how things actually end up.
I think a huge argument for SF ignoring the whole startup culture that you just mentioned is that so much collision happens. If you want to be an actor, you move to LA. If you want to go do finance, you go to New York. If you want to do startups, you move here.
Yeah.
Do you think you can build a successful startup anywhere in the world, or do you think your chances are much higher if you?
I mean, those two statements can be true at the same time.
Got it.
Right? I think it's obvious. You can build a generational company. Let's not even say a good startup, a generational, top 10 in the world company, anywhere in the world. I mean, Microsoft started in Albuquerque and ended up in Seattle.
Okay.
Right? Amazon is in Seattle. Obviously, like the Googles, the Facebooks, the NVIDIAs are South Bay, I'm pretty sure. But so you had examples. So like there's an existence proof there. Is it easier? I think there's 2 dimensions. The first is it depends on what you're doing. If you're doing like B2B SaaS, obviously, right? If you're doing fintech, I don't know. You might actually be better off in New York. If you're doing consumer, not sure. I mean, Snapchat's from LA. Riot Games is in LA. All of the game stuff is sort of in LA.
There's a lot of consumer stuff in LA. Also, all the consumer VCs are in LA. 2 out of 3 main investors that we have are in LA.
Yeah.
Something with consumer in LA going on.
Yeah. Most of our investors are not actually based in SF. Yeah. I think the other aspect of it is, does it up your chances to have never spent any time in SF/the Bay? Or does it significantly up your chances to come here for 6 months, a year, maybe longer, build a network, learn the culture, meet people? And then if you've already been here for like a year, are you really getting much more marginal value out of the place?
Just get a taste, see what it's like, see where you're happiest.
Yeah, well, not even see what it's like, but integrate, right? Meet people, make friends, and learn the scene, learn the playbooks, learn, how people think about things, how people do.
That makes sense. You're based in New York, at least for now.
I go back and forth, so I still have a place there. But last month I spent 8 months out of the year here.
Okay,
Sorry, last year.
Okay, a lot of people love New York. And my co-founder been trying to get me to move there.
Yeah.
Would you say you're happiest in New York?
Except in the winter when it's like cold and snowy and terrible. Yeah, I think, I'm quite ADHD, very high energy. And so it's nice to be in the middle of like the densest place in the US where everything is open all the time. I'm also a night owl. I like to, walk the street at 2 a.m. before I go to bed. You can experience anything there, sort of an infinite city. I spent like, if you want to get into a hobby, for example, and you're like, where are the top 10 places in the world to like learn or do this hobby? 3 out of them will be in New York.
0 would be in SF.
For certain things, maybe. The jujitsu here is pretty good.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. How valuable are distractions? Because like one of the reasons that I don't want to move to New York is because there's so much shit to do and I feel like I won't focus. But you said earlier, rest time, doing other shit could be beneficial.
Yeah. I think, and this pops into like the sort of YC kind of lean, like work, 996, pivot, iterate, kind of like cultural thing. I think there's a tremendous value to downtime. There's a tremendous value to spending the weekend hiking in the woods or skiing or doing a cooking class or visiting an art museum, giving yourself time to rest, giving your subconscious time to think over things. There's a tremendous value to friends and family. Beat spending time with them every day, that sort of like emotional support because, being a founder, doing a startup is hard. So it's a balance, but I feel like a lot of people in SF neglect that. I would argue the people in Europe don't work hard enough.
Yeah. We just met a bunch of founders and he's actually surprised by how much work gets done by New York founders. They're a little anal about the work that they do, but there's obviously the other side as well. Why were you in SF to begin with?
Well, we moved here originally for the Speedrun Accelerator.
Okay.
Which our startup went through. I saw 04 last January. And they were like, you have to move to SF for 3 months. And we did, and we found a lot of use out of it. So stayed for longer.
And is it the XXNZ speedrun in LA now or?
They swap between swatches.
Got it.
Because actually, I think most of the partners, both of the GPs are based in LA, not SF.
Got it. I generally, like we didn't do YC or speedrun. I feel like most accelerators are, kind of a waste of time. What was your experience with, with Elbow?
I think it depends. I think the top tier accelerators are 100% worth it. YC, Speedrun, HF0, South Park Commons. They have different flavors, but essentially what you get, right, is like reasonable money for the very first round on pretty good terms. You're giving up 7%, 10%, whatever. You get a trademark stamp in terms of like, we're backed by YC or we're backed by Speedrun or South Park Commons or whatever. You get a nice batch structure where you network, you build friendships, you build relationships with all the other founders in your batch. And then you get a demo day, which is fantastic for raising because it gives you more auction style dynamics. So it's a great way to like set up and like start to propel a company. It's not necessary for everyone, but I think it's also super helpful for people who aren't known in the ecosystem yet.
Got it. That makes sense. I feel like one valuable thing is like after you graduate from the batch, figuring out how the hell other people are building their companies, right? Like as a startup founder, you need to know how to sell. You need to know how to fundraise. There's all these things that you need to know how to do in the early days, especially, but no one freaking tells you how to build a company. Like how you set up organizations and all that. And having a group of folks that are going through the same thing at the same time, I think helps. And with that, I kind of want to know, do you spend a lot of time thinking about how do I build a company? Or is it kind of like the phase of your company where it feels more like a school project, everyone's doing everything, and you haven't like set strict boundaries around roles yet?
Yeah, right now we're just 3 people. And we've all worked with each other before, and everyone on the team founded a company previously. So we just kind of do it intuitively and work together on everything. I think when you think about building an organization, it's probably really hard, but you sort of need to earn that right by actually producing value in the business. I think the way that I've thought about building an organization is just like right now, it's not the biggest concern. And so the only thing that kind of matters is the big principles. How big of a company do we want to be? Kind of like what kind of culture do we want to set? Like what are our values? And we know that we want to remain pretty small. Even as we scale up, like you can do a lot more things now with AI and with just simplifying your systems. Beyond that, not really. I haven't really thought about that.
What does the third person on your team do?
Alex, good friend of ours.
Okay.
We got this advice from one of the co-founders of Ubark. We're introduced by our seed lead that our first hire should not be technical because I'm technical, AI, ML, my co-founder's technical, electronics, mechatronics, hardware. And that person should just sort of do everything that isn't technical. Go-to-market testing, admin, interacting with suppliers, vendors, anything you can think of to free us up to really focus on the tech stack especially because that's important for our company early on in terms of proving things out.
The first hire is probably the most important hire. How did you meet this person, and like, what were the reasons why you hired Alex?
Yeah, he's actually been a good friend of ours, both of ours, for a while. Met him through his co-founder, who I met in New York at a party, and we just became sort of like best friends.
You said his co-founder, so he was working at a startup before.
They co-founded that startup before together.
Oh, got it. So your current co-founder co-founded a company with your first hire.
Our first hire co-founded a company with one of my best friends who I met in New York.
Got it. Okay. That was a little confusing.
Yeah.
That makes sense. One of my guests last week said that the first hires don't have nearly a great of an outcome if things succeed. And because of that, he's paying market rate for, software engineer in the Bay. And do you have any thoughts on what first hire compensation should be? And also what founders should get paid in general?
Ooh, that is really tough. I think it depends on every single company. I'm pretty sure we pay him market rate for like the sort of ops go-to-market style stuff, and then equity, of course. What was the second part of the question?
How about founders? Should founders get a salary?
Founders should pay themselves. That's one really important thing. If you raised venture capital or you have free cash flow, you should pay yourself. It does not make sense to have to like worry about making rent or buying food every month. That's just extra emotional stress that's going to make you less likely to succeed. Yeah. I think you can find the bands online, but like if you've raised under a few mil, probably like 100, 150K.
That's a lot of money.
Well, if you're technical as a software engineer, how much would you be making, right?
I think
If you've only raised a few 100K, then probably you want to be roommates with your co-founder.
Yeah.
And that's the office.
Yeah.
And your salary is for like food.
Yeah. I think with this is probably one of those San Francisco culture things where, at least for us, we raised a couple million, and we're like, if my rent is paid and the company pays for the rent, there's literally no reason why.
Right.
I need money. So our salary is like the minimum that we could possibly make it. But also, if we made more money, I would just be sitting in my freaking bank account, and my personal bank account earns less interest than my business bank account. So we just leave it in the freaking business bank account. That's kind of how I think about it.
The way I think about it is ultimately as co-founders, and especially as like CEO, and usually the co-founders are board members too, right? You have a fiduciary duty to your investors. Mm-hmm. And your investors really, it's a power law outcome, right? They really only care about you increasing your chance of being one of the big outcomes. And then, of course, like being fair and honest and transparent and having a good relationship. And I think that paying yourself something reasonable, still way below market rate, increases those odds.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
One thing you'll notice when you're driving the Zooks is that people will take their cameras out and they're taking pictures of you. And it's like extra weird because we have cameras and flashes everywhere. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe we should get a segment in the podcast where I rotate the camera and wave at people taking pictures at us.
I think that'd be cool.
It makes me feel like a celebrity,
Yeah.
But okay, what do we not cover?
I don't know. I feel like we covered a lot.
We have 3 minutes left. Anything you want to leave the people with? I guess, like, where can people learn more? Are you guys like in stealth still, or?
Yeah, we haven't announced the last round yet.
Got it. Yeah. We haven't either. Mostly because we're lazy though.
I will say this, maybe this is a broader thing, is one really important thing as a founder is to understand the nature of like external perception. And like I see a lot of people, like they raise their round and they just like immediately announce and they get some buzz and it goes nowhere. And I actually think round announcements you should be very specific about when you do them in order to get the most out of them. And usually they're actually useful for raising the next round. You say, hey, we raised, you don't mention when you raised.
Yeah.
This much, and this is what we've done, and look at all the great progress we've made.
Yeah. Right. And Maurice was saying the other day, Maurice, it was one of my only co-founder, was saying that you announce your last raise when you've closed the next one. Because that way you say, doctors raise 2 million and their revenue is the cart revenue. It'll make you feel, and it'll make people think that you're very undervalued, which will help your future fundraise.
I think that's possible, but when you go to raise, people are going to look at the exact numbers anyway. So I prefer just thinking of it as like a catalyst.
Yeah.
Like you announce your pre-seed to raise your C, your seed to raise your A.
Well, that's it.
Don't forget your thing.
Ryan, this is awesome. Thanks for hopping on, man.
It was a lot of fun. Hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah.